Are you ready for another fun and exciting literature?
Okay, come and let's join us.
But don't forget to fasten your seatbelt.
And also wear a face mask and face shield.
Oh, look what I found!
The Analects of Confucius.
Okay, let's see what's inside.
According to tradition, Confucius was born in 551 BCE. The name Confucius is a Latinized form of Kong Fuzi, or respected Master Kong, a title commonly used to refer to him in Chinese. Confucius, also known as Kong Qiu or Kong Pu Chu, who was a Chinese philosopher, teacher, and political figure.
After his death, Confucius became the official imperial philosophy of China, which was extremely influential during the Han, Tang, and Song dynasties. Confucius was born in the small feudal state of Lu, situated in northeastern China in the area of present-day Shandong province.
It is clear from the Analects that Confucius grew up in considerable poverty, an experience that seems to have made him particularly sensitive to matters of wealth and class. At an early age, as he tells us, he devoted himself to learning, and the importance of education is a major theme in the Analects. The extent to which this learning related to written texts and to which it was based on oral tradition is unclear.
The Analects refers frequently to two texts, the Book of Odes and the Book of Documents, both of which Confucius, according to legend, had some hand in editing. A third early text, the Book of Changes, is mentioned in one version of the Analects.
Oh, did you know that the Analects of Confucius is consisted of 20 books?
Okay, let's find out again.
The Analects of Confucius, Book 1. Confucius introduces many of the main ideas in the Confucian philosophy. The gentleman appears in the very first section of text known as a chapter. Number 1. Young people should be filial at home, brotherly with others, circumspect, and trustworthy. Let them act kindly toward the populace in general and befriend those of humane character. If after that they have energy left over, let them study the arts. Number 2. If the gentleman lacks gravity, he won't command respect. If he studies, you will avoid narrow-mindedness. Put prime value on loyalty and trustworthiness. Have no friends who are not your equal, and if you make mistakes, don't be afraid to correct them. Number 3. A gentleman when he eats doesn't try to stuff himself. When he chooses a dwelling is not overly concerned about comfort. He is attentive to affairs, careful of his words, and look to those who have the way to correct himself. He is the kind who can be called a lover of learning. The Analects of Confucius, Book 2, begins with a few comments on how people should be virtually governed, but then focuses primarily on how virtuous people should develop and conduct themselves. Number 1. Conduct government in accordance with virtue, and it will be like the North Star standing its place with all the other stars paying court to it. Number 2. Guide them with government orders, regulate them with penalties, and the people will seek to evade the law and be without shame. Guide them with virtue, regulate them with Ritwal, and they will have a sense of shame and become upright. The master said, "If you are strict in overseeing them, they will be respectful. If you are filial and compassionate, they will be loyal. If you promote persons of goodness and teach those who are incompetent, then the people will be diligent." The Analects of Confucius, Book 3, focuses on the importance of Ritwal, which includes the guidelines and expectation for correct behavior in both social and religious situations.
Duke Ding asks how the ruler should treat his ministers and how the ministers should serve the ruler.
Confucius replied, "The ruler should treat his minister in accordance with ritual. The minister should serve the ruler with loyalty." The master said, "Standing above others but without tolerance, carrying out rites but without reverence, conducting funeral proceedings without grief, how can I bear to view such as this?" The Analects of Confucius, Book 4, is the first to focus primarily on humanness, or virtuous thought and action, and its related behaviors. Number 1. Humaneness is the beauty of the community. If you can choose but do not make humanness your home, how can you be called wise? Number 2. Only the humane person is able to like others and is able to hate others. Number 3. Truly set your mind on humanness and you will be without evil.
Book 5 are mostly the master's reactions to individuals and specific situations. The master said, "At first, when it came to people, I listened to their words and trusted their conduct. Now, when it comes to people, I listen to their words and observe their conduct. It was you who brought about this change." Someone said, "What about San Cheng?" The master said, "Cheng is all desires. How can he be called a man of firmness?" Sigong asked, "Why was Kong Wensi given the posthumous name cultured?" The master said, "Clear-sighted and a lover of learning, he was not ashamed to ask questions of his inferiors. Therefore, he was given the name cultured." The master said of Sichan, he exemplified the way of the gentleman in four respects. In conducting himself, he was prudent. In serving his superiors, he was respectful. In looking out for the common people, he was caring. And employing the common people, he followed what was right. Book 6 contains more of the master's comments on a number of people and situations. Zogong asked about Sizang Bozi. The master said, "He will do his lenient in nature." Sogong said, "If he is strict with himself but lenient when it comes to overseeing the common people, will that be all right? If one is lenient with himself and behaves towards other in a lenient manner, that's too much leniency, isn't it?" The master said, "What you say is correct." Duke I questions Confucius, saying, "Who among your disciples loves learning?" Confucius replied, "There was Yan who he loved learning, never took his anger out on others, never repeated his mistakes. Regrettably, he had a short life and is dead now. Since then, there are none who love learning, or none I've heard of." Book 7 provides the most authentic portrait of the master as a teacher and a learner, mostly from his own words. The master said, "To be silent and understand, to learn without tiring, never to weary of teaching others, this much I can do." The master said, "Virtue not sufficiently practiced, learning not sufficiently digested, to hear what is right and not be able to do it, to have shortcomings and not be able to remedy them. These are the things that I worry about. The master said, if a person comes with a bundle of dried meat or a batter, I never refuse him instructions. If they are not eager to learn, I don't enlighten them. If they are not struggling to put it into words, I don't assist them. I hold up one corner to show them, and if they can't come back with the other three, then I don't go on. The master said, there are those who do not have knowledge and yet make things. I'm not that way. I hear much. Choose what is good and follow it. See much and keep it in mind. This is the best thing to knowledge. Book 8 offers a deeper look into the views of another important teacher in the ongoing Confucian tradition, Master Zheng. The master said, courtesy without ritual becomes labor. Caution without ritual becomes timidity. Daring without ritual becomes rudeness. Directness without ritual becomes obtrusiveness. If the gentleman treats those close to him with generosity, the common people will be moved to Humaneness. If he does not forget his old associates, the common people will shun cold-heartedness. When Master Zheng was ill, Meng Jizi asked how he was. Master Zheng spoke these words. When a bird is about to die, its cries are sad. When a man is about to die, his words are good. With regard to the way, there are three things the gentleman prizes in his action and manners: that he be far from harshness or arrogance; in ordering his appearance, that he stick close toward trustworthiness; in his utterances, that they be far from crude or unseemly. As for the sacrificial baskets and stands, they are expert to tend to such matters.
Book 9 is all about Master's statement about Humaneness, which he never spoke of. This seems contradictory since the Analects contains many of the Master's quotations about Humaneness. Perhaps it means he only answered questions about the topic when asked and didn't make unsolicited statements about it. The Master seldom spoke about profit, about faith, or about humaneness. He observed 4 prohibitions: no willfulness, no obstinacy, no narrow-mindedness, no egotism. In Chapter 6, the Prime Minister questioned Zigong, saying, "The Master, is he a sage? He has so many capabilities." Zigong said, "Indeed, heaven has opened the way for him to become a sage, and he has many capabilities besides." After hearing the conversation, the master replied, "The Prime Minister knows me well. When I was young, I was in humble circumstances and hence became capable in many menial undertakings. But is the true gentleman a person of many capabilities? Surely he is not." It is quite observable in this book that the master demands responsibility and the constant internalization of learning. Using the analogy of making a mound with baskets of dirt, he encourages students in Chapter 19 to own both their shortcomings, no matter how small, and their most minor accomplishments. In any time, there is value to recognizing and accepting your own strength and weaknesses. He also meaningfully warns in Chapter 24 that agreeing with truths means nothing if you don't use them for self-improvement. Book 10 is almost entirely a description of ritual behavior, such as how to dress, walk, and compose one's face for particular occasions. In Chapter 7, it is said that in periods of ritual purification, he always wore a clean robe made of hemp. At such times, he invariably changed his diet and sat in a seat different from his ordinary one. This book described the actions of either the master or the ideal gentleman, perhaps also describing the master as an example of correct ritual behavior. How to act in situations from the local community to the temple to court are described. No detail is too small. very fine point of dress, diet, and eating habits, including complex rules for the care and consumption of sacrificial meat, are offered as examples for proper behavior. Book 11 reveals a lot about the master's feelings toward various followers. A number of chapters are devoted to the master's favorite student, Yui, actually named Yan Yuan or Yen Yuan, and his early death. Although most expresses admiration, affection, or grief, the master first chides Yui a little in chapter 4 for admiring his words too much. In chapter 4, the master said, Yui was not one to give me much help. Nothing I said failed to please him. In chapter 8, when Yan Yuan died, his father Yan Lu asked the master, would you sell your carriage in order to provide money for your outer coffin? The master said, when the sons are talented or untalented, each man speaks up for his own. But when my son Li died, I provided an inner coffin but no outer coffin. I followed the high officials. It would not be right for me to go on foot. The passage greatly shows that the master holds Yui to be equal to his own son by telling Yui's father they should have the same funeral honors. This shows he not only viewed Yui as a son, but also that he had previously lost one of his own sons. Book 12 addresses ideas of humaneness and gentleman, as well as some thoughts on government. A wide range of people want to learn his teachings in this section, including well-known followers, lesser-known students, and powerful government figures. In chapter 1, Yan Yuan asked about humaneness. The master said, to master the self and return to Ritwal is to be humane. For one day, master and the self return to Ritwal, and the whole world will become humane. Being humane proceeds from you yourself. How could it be proceed from others? Yan Yuan said, may I ask how to go about this? The master said, if it is contrary to Ritwal, don't look at it. If it is contrary to Ritwal, don't listen to it. If it is contrary to Ritwal, don't utter to it. If it is contrary to Ritwal, don't do it. Yan Yuan, lacking in cleverness, though I am, I would like, if I may, to honor these words. A number of chapters in this book emphasize that the ideals of humaneness and the gentleman must be achieved internally. The most authentic of the master's teachings always contain this theme of focusing on others' concerns before one's own and focusing on one's own faults before others.
The Analects of Confucius, Book 13. Confucius talks about how to govern correctly and the effects of a virtuous government. If names are not rectified, then speech will not function properly. And if speech does not function properly, then undertakings will not succeed. If undertakings do not succeed, then rites and music will not flourish. If rites and music do not flourish, then punishment and penalties will not justly administered. And if punishment and penalties are not justly administered, then the common people will not know where to place their hands and feet. If the person himself is correct, then although you do not order him to do so, he will act. But if the person himself is not correct, then although you order him, he will not obey. The Analects of Confucius, Book 14. It refers to the conduct of a man of quality or a complete man. Those who have virtue invariably have something to say, but those who have something to say do not invariably have virtue. Those who are human are invariably courageous, but those who are courageous are not invariably human. A man of station who longs for the comforts of home does not deserve to be called a man of station. But the complete person of our time need to necessarily be like this. If when he spies gain, he remember what is right. When he spies danger, is ready to risk his life. When faced with old promises, do not forget his password. Then he can be termed a complete person. The Analects of Confucius, Book 15. Confucius talks about how to achieve humanness and being gentleman. The gentleman remains firm in the face of hardships.
The petty man, when he encounters hardships, gives way to panic. Dedicating himself to courtesy, he faced directly south. That was all. The man of high ideals, the human person, never tries to go on living if it is harmful to humanness. There are times when he sacrifices his life to preserve humanness. The gentleman make rightness the substance. Practice it through ritual. Display it with humility. Bring it with completion with trustworthiness. That's the gentleman. The Analects of Confucius, Book 16. Confucius talks about sets or multiples of three. Three kinds of friends are beneficial. Three kinds are harmful. Straightforward friends, sincere friends, well-informed friends. These are beneficial. Hypocritical friends, psychopathic friends, glib-talking friends, these are harmful. Three kinds of delight are beneficial. Three kinds are harmful. The delight of regulating oneself with rites and music. The delight of speaking of others' good points. The delight of having many worthy friends. These are beneficial. Delight in extravagant pleasures. Delight in idle wanderings. Delight in the joys of the peace. These are harmful.
The Analects of Confucius, Book 17. It is all about humanity and treatment for others. Number 1. Zizang asked Confucius about Humaness. Confucius said, "A person who can exercise these 5 in his dealings with the world is acting humanely." When Zizang asked what these 5 were, Confucius said, "Courtesy, tolerance, trustworthiness, diligence, and kindness. Be courteous and you avoid disrespect. Be tolerant and you win over the multitude. Be trustworthy and you are trusted by others. Be diligent and your work will go well. Be kind and you will be able to employ others." Number 2. The master said, have you heard of the 6 terms and the 6 flaws attending them?" Silo replied, "No, not yet." "Sit down," said the master, "and I will tell you. Love of humanness without love of study invites the flow of foolishness. Love of understanding without love of study invites the flow of recklessness. Love of trustworthiness without love of study invites the flow of injurious behavior. Love of uprightness without love of study invites the flow of bluntness. Love of bravery without love of study invites the flow of riotousness. Love of firmness without love of study invites the flow of irrational action." The Analects of Confucius, Book 18. It is all about righteous person in chaotic world. Number 1. Zilo returned and reported this to Confucius, who sighed and said, "One cannot simply live with the birds and bees. If I am not to join with my fellow men, who am I to join with? If the way prevailed in the world, I would not try to change things." Number 2. Zilo said, "If you fail to serve the ruler, you lack rightness. You understand that the etiquette between elder and younger cannot be set aside. How, then, can the right relations between ruler and subject be set aside? You want to keep yourself unsullied, but you bring confusion to a much greater relationship. The gentleman, in serving the ruler, is carrying out his rightful duty. That the way does not prevail today, we know that already." The Analects of Confucius, Book 19. It is all about a gentleman and devotion for learning. Number 1. Zisha said, "Day by day, understanding what is beyond you. Month by month, never forgetting what you can do. You may be called a lover of learning." Number 2. Zisha said, "The gentleman has 3 changes of appearance. Seen from a distance, he is austere. Approached more closely, and he is mild. Listen to his words, and he is sharp-spoken. Number 3. Zhang Ziqin said to Zigong, "You are being too modest. How could Zhongli be a worthier man than you?" Zigong said, "The gentleman speaks one word and shows that he is wise, speaks one word and shows that he is unwise. Therefore, he must be careful how he speaks. Our master can no more be equaled than one can mount a stairway to the sky. If our master were to preside over a state or a powerful family, then, as the saying has it, if he raised them, they would stand. If he lead, they would go forward. If he chose peace, they would flock around. If he moved, they would move in harmony. In life, he is glorious. In death, deeply mourned. How, then, could he be equaled?" The Analects of Confucius, Book 20. It is all about rules to live by. Number 1. Zizang questioned Confucius about government, saying, "How should one proceed in order to govern effectively?" The master said, "Honor the 5 desirables, avoid the 4 evils. Then you can govern effectively." Zizang said, "What are the 5 desirables?" The master said, "The gentleman is bountiful but not extravagant, exacts labor but rouses no resentment, has desires but is not covetous, is self-possessed but not arrogant, dignified but not oppressively so." Number 2. Zizang said, "What are the 4 evils?" The master said, "To execute people without first instructing them. This is called tyranny. To demand to see result without first giving warning. This is called unreasonableness. To be lax in issuing orders and then suddenly call for results. This is called brigandage. When something has to be allotted anyway, to be stingy in allotting it, this is called the habit of government clerks." Number 3. Confucius said, "If you do not understand the will of heaven, you will have no way to become a gentleman. If you do not understand Ritwal, we have nowhere to take your stand. If you do not understand words, you will have no way to know people."
And that is the end of the story. Ooh, it's been a long day.
What a great story, isn't it?
Yes, you're right. It is clear that the worldly concern of Confucianism rests upon the belief that human beings are fundamentally good and teachable, improvable, and perfectible through personal and communal endeavor, especially self-cultivation and self-creation.
I feel so tired and I feel so sick.
It's time to go home now. Goodbye! Thank you for watching.